Hey guys, this is Bluffmunkey again, and in this video we're going to take a look at recreating a gated 80s snare drum. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go into Ableton's stock drum rack library and pick the LD preset, which is a Lindrum. So let's just drag this one in now. And this is going to give you, you can probably tell, some ubiquitous 80s drum sounds. So I'm going to drop a MIDI clip in. Actually, let's take the tempo. It's already at 105, that's fine. 105 is probably around where most of them are at right now. Okay, so I'm just going to click in a pretty standard pattern just so we can get something going. Right, what I'm going to do on this little hi-hat section here, I'm going to use Alt and drag to affect the velocities of each individual hit. It's just a little trick if you don't already know it. So if I drag up and down, you can see the velocities at the bottom changing there, because these are quite fiddly to use with a mouse. So something like that. And I'll duplicate that over and see what this sounds like. Okay, that's going to be fine for what we need to do. I'm just going to quickly open up the mixer channel inside the drum rack here so I can affect the volumes of this hi-hat. It's a bit loud. And then we'll come into the macros. The good thing about these Ableton drum rack presets is the macros are already set up for everything, so it's a bit of a time saver. Click on the hi-hat pad, and we're going to take the decay down a bit so it's not quite so long. Okay, that'll do for now. What we need to do is we need to set up a return channel inside the drum rack, because if you notice here, this is the main output for the drum rack, and we've got send buttons or send knobs for the standard Ableton return channels, but you don't get them for the individual channels inside the drum rack. I don't know why, that's just how Ableton has chosen to do it. So I can send the entire mix to a reverb, but that is not what we want. What we do need to do is come down to this button here on the drum rack and click it for show hide chain list. And this gives us a list of all the chains inside the drum rack already. And then a little bit further down, come down here, and you need to click on show hide return chains, which is hidden by default. And that gives you a little box to drop effects into. And the one I'm going to use is, if I come up to my own plugins, I'm going to use Valhalla Vintage Verb, which recreates the sound of a lot of the 80s reverb units, I think specifically after some of the Lexicon ones. You can use Ableton standard reverb in here. I just happen to prefer this Valhalla one. So we'll drop this down here, drag and drop into this box. And that creates another chain inside the drum rack. So I will just pick a preset from this rather than fiddling about for too much. Drum plate, snare plate. Yeah, let's choose the snare plate. And I'm also going to come to this section and pick the 1980s algorithm. So that makes it sound even more like an 80s reverb. The next thing we need to do is we'll whack up the decay on the reverb. And the reason being, if I have the decay set down fairly low, you'll hear the reverb tail falling off while the snare is still sounding. So we want the reverb itself to be as full as possible. And then we're going to gate it off later. And let's just cut out some bottom end from the reverb as well, because that will muddy things up. Okay, we're done with that. Next thing to do is click on the reverb chain here, and we need to add a gate after the reverb. So coming up to Ableton's standard effects, where's the gate? Here we are. And I need to drag the gate down after the reverb to this line here. We need the gate to be right after the reverb, not after the entire drum rack. If I drop it here, then the gate's going to be acting over everything. So I need to drag it back just after the reverb itself. So before we activate the gate or do anything with it, let's just hear the reverb as it is on the snare right now. If you notice, you've got some send sliders appear on each individual drum channel now. They're slightly different to the normal send knobs. You've actually got a little slider. So let's find our snare drum, which is here. Okay, that's obviously way too long. So what we want to do is switch on the gate and then use this tiny little triangle open up the sidechain function, switch on, the same way as you do with the compressor actually. And we want to take audio input from the drum rack, which is this Kick Core LD, that's the preset name. So we open that up, and then specifically from the snare drum itself. So come down the list to your snare, and then we want to click post mixer. So now what's happening is the gate is being triggered by that specific snare channel here. So the gate will open and close while the audio is coming from that channel. And we can use these controls here, attack, hold, and release, to define how long the gate is open for. Excuse me. So what we want to do is set the attack as low as possible or as fast as possible. Because it's a snare drum, we want the reverb snapping open as soon as the snare drum hits. Then the hold knob is going to define how long the gate stays open while the snare is being, the audio from the snare is coming through. And then the release obviously is how quickly the gate shuts down again. So remember, this gate is going to open and close the signal from the reverb, which is defined by the audio from this snare channel coming into the gate. So let's see how it sounds right now. We need to set the send level up a little bit here. Okay, you can hear it doing something, and if you look at the graph here, you can just see it flicking open and closed every time the snare drum hits. But we probably want a little bit more than that. So let's open up the hold parameter and the release parameter, have a play around with those, and see what sound we can come up with. So that's a bit more like it. Right, that's roughly where we need to be. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to drag an EQ down after the gate, because I'm sure there's some nonsense coming through from the reverb as well. Yeah, this kind of stuff which we don't want. Let me just change the slope here. And I'm also going to have a little hunt around the mid-lows, because you often find that you get some boxiness from a snare drum. So I'm just going to narrow this Q here. Yeah, around there. Let's take that out. Actually, we don't really need a slope that severe. And then finally, I'll add a glue compressor just to smush everything together a little bit. I won't do a lot with this compressor, just enough to push the snare sound and the reverb sound forward a little bit. That sounds fine to me. So that's roughly where we need to be. So what I'll do is I'll just switch the gate off, so you can hear what the reverb's doing without the gate. Remember, the gate's opening and closing the signal from the reverb, which is defined by the audio coming in from the snare drum. So as the audio comes in from the snare, the gate will open, allow the reverb signal to come through, and then it will close again once the snare drum finishes. So you can hear clearly what it's doing there. So I hope you found this one useful. In the next tutorial, I'm actually going to add a synthwave 80s style bass and lead to this project. So I'll see you there. Thanks.
Thanks everybody for watching, commenting, and indeed liking. We really do appreciate all the support we get here on our Sonic Academy YouTube channel. So if you found this video super useful, please, we'd love you to hit the subscribe button. We update the YouTube channel every week with new content. And if you want to watch some more relevant content, just click on the videos beside me.